One of my friends just handed me this Kenwood Tri-Band HT TH-F6A, and the problem is he dropped it, and it no longer transmits when you push the push-to-talk button. Everything works fine, it receives fine, and if it plugs in a speaker mic, it works fine with that. So we think that just the mechanical push-to-talk switch on the side is what was broken. So we'll take a look and see if we can repair this. So the first thing to do is to take it apart. We'll start by removing the belt clip, and there's 2 screws on the back. And next we just remove the antenna and the 2 knobs. And then we need to remove the 2 retaining nuts on the antenna connector and around the knob shafts. Now in this case these are not retaining nuts, there's no flat edges on them, there's just 2 slots. And you can get in there oftentimes with a screwdriver and push on them to get them open. I've also found that an angled pair of needle nose that are filed down slightly can get into those slots pretty easily, and then very carefully can turn and loosen them up. And then once they're loose, they're easy to spin off. And finish removing the one off of the antenna connector. And so next we'll just pull the battery off the back, and we just need to remove these 2 screws to remove the chassis out of the housing. Okay, with those screws removed, we should be able to carefully pull the chassis out of the housing here. There's some rubber seals in here that kind of make this a little bit snug, but this should just all slide right out. There we go. You've got to be careful, the speaker wires are still attached, so we'll just unplug the speaker from the connector right here, and we can take the front half of the housing and put that aside. The push-to-talk switch is this one right here, and if we look carefully, I can move it with the screwdriver here. So it's clear that it's become detached from the board. So either the solder joint's fractured, which would be good news because then it's just a matter of resoldering the switch back to the board, or the board itself became delaminated and the copper traces ripped off the board. If that's the case, it's less likely we'll be able to repair it. But in order to figure that out, I'll have to remove this board from the housing and take a look at it from the other side. Alright, to do that we've got to remove looks like 5 screws to pull this PCB off of the chassis. Okay, so with those 5 screws removed, a little gentle prying and the board does come loose. And there's really just one connector kind of holding these together, so we can separate that connector and have the board separate and take a close look at that switch. We'll see how well this works focusing through 2 magnifiers here, but it looks like somewhat good news. Looks like there might be a little bit of delaminating on the board where the switch attaches, but where it's delaminated here is next to some ground plane, and the parts that is delaminated is also ground. So I may be able to scrape a little solder mask away from the ground plane and solder bridge the solder across here. It won't be as strong as the original, but versus having to replace this entire board, it's probably not bad. I'm not sure if this is going to focus right through my magnifier here, but it doesn't look too bad. You can see that both contacts of the switch are actually broken away from the solder, so that part of the board's not delaminated, so that's good. So I think if I just clean up and scrape a little solder mask off on either side of the switch for the mechanical hold down, I should be able to resolder this switch back down to the board and make it all work. And it's times like this I wish I had a really nice stereo microscope to work under instead of this illuminated magnifier, but this will have to do. So I'll see if I can scrape a little solder mask off on either side of the switch here for my solder bridge with a small little X-Acto knife here. and then we'll try resoldering both sides of this. See if we can restart by resoldering the connections on the back of the switch. So I'm going to hold it down with a little eraser here. I applied a little bit of flux to the joint here. Let's see if we can get some solder to flow. And it looks like that worked. Well, it looks like the soldering was successful on both sides of the switch to reinforce it to the remaining copper board or copper plane on the board, as well as the reconnections on the back of the switch. So I've got some flux we need to clean up and just clean these joints up a little bit, a final inspection, and put it back together. Keep our fingers crossed. Well, a few minutes cleaning with some isopropyl. Looks like those joints came out pretty good. Well, after inspecting it a bit, I'm pretty happy with the way this repair looks. So I'm hoping that nothing else is fractured on the board, and we should be able to put everything back together, just reversing the process we did when we took it apart. Okay, with all the screws back in and the speaker reconnected, we can reinsert the chassis back into the housing of the radio carefully. Make sure we don't pinch any wires and we don't shear any components off of the board. Okay, we'll reinsert the screws holding the chassis into the housing. And reinstall the retaining nuts on the top of the control shafts and the antenna connector. And we'll tighten them down with my modified offset needle nose pliers. Okay, we can reinstall the knobs. And the connector, or the antenna. Alright, time for the test. Let's turn it on. Well, it powers on, that's good news. And push the push to talk. And it goes into transmit. Looks like that was a successful repair. Alright, one more quick check here. W2AEW testing. Okay, it looks like we can reach the local repeater here from the basement, so I guess it's transmitting okay. Well, that was a very satisfying repair. Oftentimes when you get into these modern devices with very dense surface mount boards, the chances of fixing them is pretty slim. So very happy that this all worked out well. We've got the same luck with the next repair I've got going on back here, an FT817. So if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And thanks again for watching. See you next time.